These are the headlines we're following at this hour. The first standalone summit between South Korea, the U.S. and Japan coming up this Friday at Camp David, with discussions to include launching a trilateral cooperative mechanism to tackle North Korea and other regional challenges. After the World Scout Jamboree came to a close with a uniting K-pop concert, some scouts still remain in the country to explore Korean culture. Amid the devastation from the wildfires in Maui, the death toll rises to 93, the deadliest wildfires in the U.S. in a century. Good afternoon. President Yoon departs for U.S. on Thursday for the three-way summit with the leaders of the U.S. and Japan at Camp David on Friday. In what will be their first standalone summit, the three leaders are set to discuss launching a trilateral cooperative mechanism to tackle North Korea and other regional challenges. Our top office correspondent Oh Soo-young starts us off.
South Korea, the United States and Japan will establish a trilateral system for multi-layered cooperation to face security and economic challenges in the Indo-Pacific region jointly. That's according to Seoul's Deputy National Security Advisor ahead of the Camp David talks this Friday between Presidents Yoon, Joe Biden and Prime Minister Fumio Kishida. Gathering at the secluded presidential venue, the leaders will focus on institutionalizing a distinctive mechanism for cooperation.
The leaders are set to discuss the common vision and basic principles for trilateral cooperation and establish a comprehensive and multi-layered cooperation system in various fields and at all levels.
On security, the leaders will look to further strengthen their joint response to common threats in the region, namely North Korea's growing nuclear and missile capabilities, with practical military measures. US Ambassador to Japan Rahm Emanuel said last week that their joint statement would feature the regularization of top-level meetings to at least once a year, annual joint military training, along with intel sharing and cyber cooperation to deter North Korea. A senior Yoon official said the leaders' discussion will have the final word on such details, and that the format and the semantics of the trilateral body are being ironed out. Another key agenda item is cooperating to procure economic security with talks on supply chains, energy and advanced technologies. With the trilateral framework to strengthen their policy coordination on various issues, the trio also plan to join forces with other regional players like the Association of Southeast Asian Nations and the North Atlantic Treaty Organization to ensure freedom, peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific. With the focus on cooperation, the senior official said the leaders won't discuss Japan's release of Fukushima wastewater, and their joint statement is unlikely to include strong words on China. The Camp David meeting is the first ever standalone summit to be held by the three countries. Their dialogues began in 1994 and were always held on the sidelines of other international events. Their talks on Friday add further momentum to fast improving relations between Seoul and Tokyo after the neighbours fully restored bilateral trade and intel sharing in recent months. Seoul says bilateral summits are also likely to take place after a luncheon and a joint press conference at Camp David.
Marking the longest time that the three countries' leaders have spent together, officials say that the Camp David meeting will make diplomatic history in the 21st century and a paradigm shift in Indo-Pacific security. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Starting next week, South Korea and the U.S. will hold their annual summertime combined military exercise to increase our combat readiness. In a joint press briefing on Monday, the two countries announced the Ulti Freedom Shield exercise will be based on scenarios that reflect diverse threats within the security environment, lessons learned from recent wars, and that it will run from August 21st to 31st. During this period, the Allies plan to carry out about 30 combined field training events, more than double compared to last year, to strengthen their ability to work together. UN member states are also scheduled to participate in this year's event, as a neutral nation supervisory commission would observe and monitor the exercise as per the Armistice Agreement. In a customary move, the Yoon administration on Monday announced a new round of pardons ahead of Liberation Day, which will also see around 800,000 administrative penalties on citizens also being lifted. Notably, Lee Jung-geun, founder of Buyong Group and a key figure in introducing rental housing to South Korea, was included. Lee, who's already finished his sentence for embezzlement and tax evasion, still has a 5-year employment restriction in effect, and the pardon will lift this. The pardons come into effect at midnight on Tuesday. Prime Minister Han Duck-soo, speaking at a cabinet meeting, said the pardons highlighted the goal of boosting the economy despite challenging domestic and international circumstances, along with supporting the recovery of vulnerable members of society. He also took the opportunity to show gratitude to those involved in the World Scout Jamboree and emphasized the government's commitment to thoroughly analyzing how the event was handled. South Korea in the first half of this year saw the biggest tourism deficit in 5 years amid a slow recovery in inbound travelers. But that recovery may speed up with China's recent resumption of its group tours to South Korea. Kim Mo-kyun reports.
Due to the slow recovery in the number of inbound travelers following the COVID-19 pandemic, South Korea's travel balance for the first half of 2023 saw its biggest deficit in 5 years. The Korea Tourism Organization said Monday that the country's travel balance from January to June recorded a $4.65 billion deficit, the biggest for the time period since 2018. The figure is also a 123% increase compared to last year. The nation's travel balance had been in deficit for 22 consecutive years up to 2022, and if this trend continues through the second half of this year, it could reach its 23rd year in the red. This drop comes as outbound travelers in the first half of the year reached 66% of the 2019 pre-pandemic levels, whereas inbound travelers were only at 52.5%. Experts say that the slow recovery of inbound Chinese travelers, who made up the biggest portion of tourists to South Korea, has had a big impact on the latest figures. In fact, the total number of Chinese tourists to Korea in the first half of this year only amounted to 19.5% of what has been seen in 2019, while tourists from 6 Southeast Asian nations have recovered to 73.5% of 2019 levels already. China has been banning group tours to South Korea since 2017 in an apparent act of retaliation against Seoul's deployment of Washington's Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System. But with Beijing's latest decision to resume such tours, there are high expectations that Seoul's travel deficit could shrink in the coming months. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
Government spending in South Korea saw its biggest on-quarter fall in 26 years in the second quarter of this year. According to Bank of Korea, consumption dropped 1.9% compared to the previous quarter, mainly due to a fall in insurance benefit claims with fewer COVID-19 and flu patients. The central bank also says spending will keep shrinking in the second half of the year as tax revenue continues to fall amid sluggish exports. The government is aiming to maintain its spend less, collect less stance in the second half of the 2023 year by reducing taxes and supporting private spending and investment. Now, over in Hawaii, amid the devastation from the wildfires in Maui, the death toll rises to 93, the deadliest wildfires in the U.S. in a century. An Sung-jin has the latest.
The fires that are sweeping through the island of Maui are already the deadliest U.S. wildfires in more than 100 years.
This is the largest natural disaster we've ever experienced. It's going to also be a natural disaster that's going to take an incredible amount of time to recover from.
The Maui chief of police, John Pelletier, said at least 93 people have been killed as of last Saturday in the town of Lahaina. He added that the number of fatalities is going to climb as the rescue teams have only searched 3% of the damaged area. Families are still looking for their loved ones.
I cannot describe what I'm feeling right now. So it's all I can feel it underneath me. So when I see the Lahaina town itself, I cannot describe how hard feelings I get.
The wildfires that started last Tuesday have destroyed at least 2,000 structures, predominantly residential buildings. Strong winds last week made it difficult to extinguish the flames. As the flames die down, search and identification processes will continue using DNA testing and dental records to identify the victims. Temporary housing and rescue efforts will be the priority for recovery as more relief is starting to arrive.
If you look at the turnout today, it's amazing. The whole island's coming together. I got people on the mainland like donating and sending money and stuff and doing whatever they can. So if we keep this up, it should be the best we can make it. Could be worse.
The federal government is deploying more than 250 Federal Emergency Management Agency personnel, but with road travel restricted, delivery of necessities has been difficult. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The World Scout Jamboree came to a close last Friday with over 40,000 scouts from around the world reuniting here in Seoul at a star-studded K-pop concert. And our Shin Se-byuk has the highlights.
A vibrant array of lights filled the Seoul World Cup Stadium on Friday as the K-pop Super Live concert brought the 25th World Scout Jamboree to a close. Some scouts were singing and dancing along with the performances while waving heart-shaped light sticks while enjoying the last moment of the official jamboree. A total of 19 K-pop acts, including New Jeans, IVE, and NCT Dream, took the stage, entertaining the 43,000 audience members from over 140 countries. These K-pop stars added a spectacular touch to the grand finale of the 2023 World Scout Jamboree.
The most impressive was New Jeans. We've seen them go very viral online, so it was very nice to see them live finally.
Everyone seemed to have a blast just soaking in the concert experience.
Originally planned for Saemangeum's outdoor stage on the 6th of August, the location went through a couple of switches due to sweltering conditions and Typhoon Kanoon, first to Jeonju World Cup Stadium before being moved to Seoul World Cup Stadium. There have been unexpected twists and turns which only made the participants eagerly await the moment.
I've had a great time anyway, regardless of what's happened, so this was just a nice way to end it.
Yeah, so. Exactly. I'm the same as well. I think definitely we'll be looking into some more K-pop.
After the concert wrapped up, the night sky was painted with colorful fireworks. With the K-pop concert, the 25th World Scout Jamboree concluded its 12-day-long journey. Shin Se-byuk, Arirang News.
After the grand finale concert, Scout members have mostly returned home over the weekend, but some are staying longer in the country to explore Korean culture. Lee Seung-jae reports.
After 12 days, the 2023 World Scout Jamboree in South Korea came to an end over the weekend, with the official closing ceremony taking place last Friday. Participants were seen at the Incheon International Airport getting ready to go back home. For some, while the 12-day event had its ups and downs, it was a memorable moment for the teenagers.
I'm very sad because I had a really good time in the Jamboree. Despite all the things that went wrong, it was a really fun experience getting to meet people from all over the world.
And some of them thanked those that helped the Scouts in any way possible when help was needed.
I'm so emotional to leave Korea, and I found out that the Koreans are so friendly, and they have tried everything to help the Scouts.
While the intense heat wave was the reason so many of the participants were sent to hospitals in the early days of the event, one Scout member raised the issue of climate change, saying it's not Korea's fault that the intense heat led to a number of heat-related illnesses. And while many of the participants left the country after the conclusion of the World Scout Jamboree, others stayed behind to experience a bit more of the country, including a group of scouts from Morocco who visited Gyeongbokgung Palace, where they dressed up in Korea's traditional hanbok. Others enjoyed spending time at amusement park, getting in some thrills before departing the country, while some of the remaining scouts checked out popular tourist destinations like Namsan Seoul Tower. While the World Scout Jamboree might be a thing of the past now, the government says it will do all it can to cater to those that chose to stay behind to see more of what Korea has to offer. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Tomorrow, August 15th, is Gwangbokjeol, or National Liberation Day here in South Korea. This is the day when Korea regained its independence from Japan in 1945 after 35 years of colonization. In light of the occasion, our Song Yujin takes us to a special exhibition being held in the city of Glendale in the U.S.
In Glendale, Los Angeles, stands the Statue of Peace. First installed in Seoul in 2011, this statue remembers the young women and girls who were forced into sexual slavery by Japan during World War II. A replica found its place in Glendale 2 years later. In light of this, curator Chun Hae-yeon has been holding a special exhibition every year since 2014.
After the statue was installed, Japanese far-right activists filed lawsuits and sent protest emails. The mayor of Glendale encouraged the Korean community to take action. I initially organized the exhibition through donations, and since 2017, I've partnered with the city library.
The centerpiece, an installation called Remembrance Unveiled by Choi Jong-un. The empty chair resembles the one that's part of the peace statue.
So it's a clear acrylic chair that has the water, as well as the water of both cities and the soil from the cemetery from the Comfort Women.
The water from Korea came from the Imjingang River near the demilitarized zone, which Choi collected himself. Another installation is Water Shadow Jeongansu by Kim Chang-gyum, which projects videos of Korean comfort women on a bowl-like structure. The rippling waves represent the pain and shame the victims had to endure. Ju Do-young's faces are portraits of contemporary Korean women ranging from a kindergartner, a monk, to an elderly woman. There are also photographs of Indonesian comfort women by Dutch artist Jan Benning and a separate section showcasing the works of Korean students from local schools. The curators hope the exhibition can shed light on the issue, foster understanding, and bring about change.
We didn't know very little about comfort women when we first started doing the exhibition, so it's been a constant education for us and everybody who sees it.
Japan remains unchanged. They continue to promote pro-Japanese policies in Glendale, but Koreans, on the other hand, seem to have relatively little interest. The rights of comfort women haven't improved a lot when compared to the past, so it would be great if we could raise awareness.
You can explore Women and War at Glendale Library until September 24th. Song Yujin, Arirang News.
Traditional Korean houses had an underfloor heating system called ondol. This traditional aspect of both Korean culture and architecture has recently been modernized so that the heat not only lasts longer, but the warmth spreads throughout the entire room. Lee Eun-jin has the details.
This is a construction site of passive architecture, which uses energy-efficient building designs to reduce carbon emissions. One of the key factors of passive architecture is using materials and techniques to retain heat in winter and keep buildings cool in summer. And the use of the traditional ondol method of heating has been incorporated with improvements. The latest ondol heating system warms the entire room evenly and for a much longer period.
There are primary Gödel stones that store heat and a layer that delivers the heat. It's a way that locks up the heat without letting it escape. It's significantly different from the old method.
The term Gödel is an old word for ondol, both meaning heated stone. And this method of heating is also an essential element of the hanok, the traditional Korean house. The latest patented method of ondol construction bakes red clay using mortar to prevent cracks in the stones, and it also prevents any smoke from entering the room. Another great improvement is that once heated, the heat is retained for roughly 6 days, which helps reduce heating costs by roughly 1/3 compared to the existing ondol systems.
The old Gödel emitted a lot of smoke, environmental pollution, but the Gödel I'm using now uses a method that reburns fuel.
Last year, the Gudul Stone Pit in Obongsan Mountain, Jeollanam-do Province, was designated a National Tangible Cultural Heritage. This new ondol technology that applies science to tradition is the successful result of more than a decade of trial and error. 이은진, Arirang News.
Let's take a look at what's going on in the world now. The Russian Navy on Sunday fired warning shots at and boarded a cargo vessel in the Black Sea. According to Russia's defense ministry, one of its patrol vessels fired on the Palau-flagged Sukhru-Okan ship after its captain failed to respond to a request to search for weapons. Moscow claims that the ship was headed to the Ukrainian port of Izmail, although data shows the ship was on its way to the Romanian port of Sulina. Moscow has previously said that it considers all ships heading toward Ukrainian waters to be potentially carrying weapons. The cargo ship was allowed to continue after the inspection. It's the first time Russia has fired on merchant ships beyond Ukraine since it refused to renew a UN-brokered grain deal in July. Australia have reached the Women's World Cup semi-finals for the first time after a nail-biting penalty shootout against France. In a toughly contested match in Brisbane on Sunday, neither side could find the net. The game ended goalless and the World Cup co-hosts came out on top in the resulting penalty shootout, winning 7-6. Australia will face England in the semi-finals after the European champions beat Colombia 2-1 in Sydney. Spain face Sweden in the other semi-final. The Final Four set-up means that this World Cup will have a first-time winner. And finally, around 150 drivers took part in a unique annual endurance race over the weekend on lawnmowers capable of reaching speeds of up to 80 kilometers per hour. Renamed the BLMRA 500 from its usual title of Le Mans to mark the 50th anniversary of the British Lawnmower Racing Association, a special extended edition of the race was held in West Sussex, England. 50 teams of 3 people, including some from the US and Europe, took turns to complete 500 laps of the 1.4-kilometer-long track. The overall winner of this year's race was Team Bullseye Racing, who completed the full 500 laps in the shortest time. Matthew Ashley, Arirang News.
Good afternoon. A heat wave advisory is in place across much of Korea. Afternoon highs are similar to slightly higher than Sunday, hovering in the low 30s in most parts of the country, except in the east of Gangwon-do Province, where rain is in the forecast during the day. And expect to see 5 to 20 millimeters of rain through Wednesday afternoon if you're there. The rest of the country will see a passing rain along with thunder and lightning. Now, feels like temperatures will be a couple of degrees higher than what the thermometer points at today. And until sudden showers pass by, it will feel rather muggy with strong UV rays. So keep an umbrella handy with sunblock on. Tomorrow is Liberation Day here in Korea. Jeollanam-do Province and Jeju will see passing rain, while the rest of the country will have a repeat of 2 days' warmth. Now, morning and evening temperatures have gotten a little more bearable after the typhoon, though the afternoon heat will stay with us through to the end of the month. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
The last surviving Korean independence fighter living in Japan returned to Korea on Sunday, just a few days ahead of National Liberation Day on August 15th. The 100-year-old Oh Sung-gyu was a former member of Liberation Army who, during Japanese colonial rule, which lasted from 1910 to 1945, fought to restore Korea's independence in a third country, China. Having spent the next 70 years of his life in Japan, he has now finally stepped again onto Korean soil. After what he called an overwhelming moment, he will take part in the 78th anniversary of Liberation Day commemorations on Tuesday. That is all for today. Thanks for watching.